Right, there it is. And then I'm going to spotlight our panelists, but yes, please continue to introduce yourselves in the chat. Really, the goal of today is to get you feeling nice and strong and confident going into the interviews happening. Hopefully you've done a big, heavy sigh at hitting submit of that DICAS application. We know that it is a huge task and took up a lot of brain space, a lot of hours, but like seriously, kudos, cheers to you all for getting that done, because that is a huge accomplishment in itself. So I want you to be feeling good for what potentially might be happening next with interviews. So I am going to pass it over to our three panelists who will just be moderating a discussion, asking questions. So if you have questions, feel free to throw them into the chat. Hopefully we touch on a good chunk of them. But after we do the panel discussion and we ask and get some questions answered related to interviews, we're going to go into breakout rooms. Y'all know we love breakout rooms and DD events, and you're going to get to practice some of these interviewing tips and skills that you've learned. So I know that might be kind of intimidating for some, like, uh-oh, I signed up to just listen on Zoom. So want to encourage you to take up space and try it out, have that growth mindset, because that's what you're here for. So with that, I am going to ask Stephanie to first introduce herself, and then Natalie, and then Emily, and then we'll get into the questions. Yes, I will be emailing out the recording as well. So.
I'm Stephanie Minkoff, joining you from Scranton, Pennsylvania, home of the office. I am designated OG. I actually have 30 years in the profession celebrated this past year. And most of that has been working as a food service director and manager, more recently in education as a dietetic internship director. And I spent about 6 years in HR as a support manager also with Sodexo. Happy to be here today.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Graves-Peters. I am a registered dietitian. I've been a registered dietitian since 2013. I'm currently a doctoral student at Teachers College, Columbia University, a doctoral candidate. And I have done a bunch of precepting as well as interviewing for this process. So I am excited to be here to share it with you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily. I am a relatively new dietitian. I graduated and passed my RD exam this past summer. I work as an acute care clinical dietitian in Chicago, Illinois. In terms of like student stuff, I am the dietetic intern coordinator at my hospital. So I'm the main preceptor for all of our dietetic interns. And I'm also on the interviewing board at Loyola University's DI program. So I do the interview process every year for Loyola as well. It's so nice to meet you all.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here. And for those that don't know, Diversify Dietetics is a nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing the racial and ethnic diversity of the field of nutrition by empowering nutrition leaders of color. And each year we do a DICAS application support program. And as a part of that, there's an amazing workshop that Rebecca Valdez, who is also in the room, one of our facilitators, organizes around the personal statement. And then each of the participants get paired with a volunteer, 3 of which are our panelists today. So if you are just learning about that program, it's amazing. Please tell your friends that might be applying for next year or for next semester. But we, again, have a really amazing base of volunteers that support the DD community, including Stephanie, Natalie, and Emily. And so with that, I do want to start off, and whoever wants to take this first question can, and if there's more that others want to add to it. Why do internships do interviews? Like, what are they looking for? What is the purpose? Tell us a little bit about the why.
I guess I'll go ahead and start, although perhaps Stephanie should be the one to start on this, given where she sits. But so I'll leave the part of the interviewer on her end, and I'll address the part of the interviewee. An interview is a two-way stream. So while they may be looking to see if you're a good fit for them, you also have to make sure it's a good fit for you, because it's a grueling, intensive investment in time in your life, and you want it to be a worthwhile experience. So they're doing it to make sure that you can meet the rigor of their program, but you're also doing it to make sure that you feel the support you're looking for.
Stephanie, anything to add to that?
I will share one of the reasons we didn't used to do interviews. And I think it's important to meet the individuals. It's like Natalie said, it gives an opportunity for us to see whether or not you're a good fit for us, but also have a conversation about whether or not we're a good fit for you and give you some individual one-to-one to see whether or not it's a big decision, what direction you want to go in. One of the other reasons too is sometimes people look really good on paper, and then when you talk to them, you're like, oh, I don't know that I can put them in front of a preceptor, or I don't know that I want that individual represented in the program. So it's important to remember that these are professional interviews. Even if they appear relaxed, you shouldn't come across too casual, because they are determining whether or not you are one of the good candidates for your internship. It's actually one of the parts of the job we like. It's nice to meet the people.
Yeah, good to put a face to the names of people that you've been reading up on. And so, Stephanie, you brought up the point of like being able to kind of see, someone might look good on paper, but are there certain like traits or skills or things that you're looking for that comes out when you're doing that interview? Are there? Could you speak to that a little bit more about maybe what some of those traits, some of those characteristics, some of those things that like you're looking for, that you're keeping an eye out on during the interview process?
So I learned behavioral-based interviewing while I worked with Sodexo for 11 years. So it's looking at specific competencies. So what competencies or traits do we hope a candidate has? Might be resiliency, self-directed. Are they able to think on their feet? Are they compassionate? Are they empathetic? So our questions are tailored around that. We don't say, are you empathetic? Instead, we'd say, tell me about a time where you had to deal with an exceptionally difficult patient or peer or preceptor or educator. How did you handle that? And it just walked me through the process of what the outcome was. So what we're getting at there is empathy, and how do you interact with others? Are you a team player? So those are some of the questions we're going to ask, because we draw a lot from that. Sometimes in those questions, you can see whether or not a person's a team player if they're always blaming it on somebody else. This didn't go well, but it wasn't my fault. It was because of this, that. If we see that thread throughout the questions, that people are throwing people under the bus, we kind of wonder how much of a challenge that individual is going to be to work with. We like low maintenance interns, truth be told.
Yeah, we appreciate that transparency. Natalie, did you want to throw in anything else?
Yeah, definitely, because when you think of, this is like a continuation of the essays, because they're limited in terms of the number of words you have to write, and just think about how much you had to remove to really tailor that essay to get everything you wanted to say said in a succinct manner, and how much you had to leave out. So this is a deeper conversation. So, as Stephanie said, we're going to show you in those essays, hopefully you showed, you didn't tell, you showed how you were empathetic, and you showed how you were a team player, and you showed how all of these skill sets that we look for in an intern. But this is really a time for you to just go tell the story in your voice, storytell, give the depth, really show your personality. And again, I want to always keep on reiterating, because in the same manner that they're looking to make sure that you fit the program, sometimes we feel so flattered that we're wanted that we don't get down to the nuts and bolts to say, is this a right fit for me? Because it may be a super competitive program, and just by getting in, you feel like you're super special, and it may not be. That's my daughter, I'm sorry. It may not be a right fit for you. So just really, I would advise you to whatever organizations, whatever companies, whatever internships you're going to be interviewing with, do your research beforehand. So and before you even look at the company itself, just be true to yourself. What are your core values? Recognizing, of course, that you're trying to develop a skill set that you do not have, and rank them from 1 to 10. And as you go through your interviews, just kind of create like a checklist of, I really like this, this doesn't have this, and come to that interview. If there are unanswered questions from your research, come to that interview with those questions, trying to get those questions asked.
Yeah, that's great. And we're hoping that, I know as part of the DOS program, there was some of that work that went into even thinking about, the story that you're telling in your personal statement and how you're kind of tailoring that to the specific location that you're going to. But maybe some feel like I gave everything that I had in that process in the DICAS application. Like I put everything out there. I don't know if I have any new information to give. So I'm wondering, and Emily, I'd love to start with you since you're so close to the process of, as a new RD, as someone that also does interviewing, that works with Ascend, like, how do you prepare for the day? What are some things that folks can do to get ready? Whether they feel like there's more that they have to say, there's more questions that they have, or if they're the opposite and they're like, I don't know what new information I can give folks.
Yeah, good question. Well, I think to prepare myself for my interviews, there were definitely some qualities I knew that I wanted to, get across. And I wrote those out on a piece of paper, whether it be resilience or whatnot. And then I explained a few times about when I showed that skill or showed that characteristic trait. And then if I was able to, I would find some opportunities to link that back to the internship. So for example, I applied to 2 schools and they were both like a public health emphasis. So I probably used some of my strengths as potentially sympathy or empathy. And then I explained a time at a hospital, maybe when I had a difficult patient or, a conversation with a friend where I've been able to sort of display that characteristic trait. And then I loop it into, and this is really important for this specific internship because I understand, there's rotations in public health nutrition at a food bank at this or that. And I think that having that, personality trait or that characteristic is really important. So I think just sort of preparing a few answers to a variety of questions was really helpful for me because we don't know exactly what question they're going to ask, but they are going to ask something, for you to talk about your strengths or weaknesses. Like that's an incredibly common question that can be asked a billion different ways. So if you just have a few general, characteristic traits and explain how you embody those with some examples, that to me was extremely helpful for preparation.
Yeah, and Emily was so nice enough to put together, I'm putting it into the chat now, it's a worksheet that she used that kind of outlines all of those different things, and folks are welcome to click that and use it as well and maybe find it helpful. Stephanie or Natalie, any other tips for how to prepare for the big day, like what to do before interview day?
Well, I just want to your point, Deanna, about saying, you've put it out all, you have nothing else to add, you've put it all out there. Every single person, hopefully, who submitted an application would have done the same thing. So while that's so personal and intimate to you, to the people who are reviewing, because you review so many, it may not be as close. So hearing it in your own voice. So don't feel like, oh my goodness, I'm repeating myself because she's already read this on my application. I don't want to say it again. No, say it again, especially if you're trying to convey a passion, go ahead and state it again. As for the big day, make sure you're not hungry. Make sure, just like 101 ABCs of parents, yes, I know we're very tempted, we're at home to just show up in slacks, as Stephanie said, it's a professional interview. So whether it's on Zoom or in person, you should treat it equally with the same sort of professionalism you would give an in-person interview. So make sure you're not hungry, make sure you're not distracted, make sure you don't have your 4-year-old daughter hungry behind you wanting dinner. Just to as much as you can control your environment. So that way you're not stressed and you're halfway there. You want to be very present.
Amazing. Stephanie, what about you? Any other thoughts?
I do think it's excellent to do your research ahead of time. It just makes you sound more interested, more engaged, it's more convinced that you want that program. So I think that's easy to do. Don't hesitate to greet the people who are going to be interviewing you. It's perfectly appropriate these day and time. People do it all the time. When they reach out to you for the interview, don't hesitate to ask, is there anything I can do to prepare? Is there anything you would like me to do in advance? You can ask the question of who is it that I'll be interviewing with? All of those things are fair game with whoever's scheduling the interview with you, and it can help somewhat reassure you or get rid of some of your nerves potentially, to know a little bit more about what you can expect.
I completely agree. Do so much research. And I thought that I was the biggest hardcore creeper, just like looking at all of the, directors and who's going to be interviewing me. There was one woman in particular, one of the programs I applied to, and I like knew what research she was interested in, and it was really aligned with what I was interested in. So I'm sure I brought that up in the interview, and she was really impressed. So I wouldn't hesitate in trying to learn as much as you can, but of course still being as genuine as possible. You're not going to find out that your interviewer is has a passion in like the microbiome, and you really want to be like a community dietitian or something like that. You don't want to make yourself sound like you're someone else, but in instances where it makes sense and it's natural and organic, totally go for it.
It's an opportunity to make a connection with that individual, and maybe they'll remember you more because of it and help you stand out.
Yeah, I love the pre-interview creep where you just get to find out so many interesting things about the people that you're going to be interacting with, or maybe even working with, if that's an internship that you decide to go with. Because I think, yeah, you're able to just hone in on all those little things that you maybe hadn't previously. You knew that you wanted to go there, but you didn't know like, oh, there's the rotation that's at this specific place. And so yes, highly encourage that either via LinkedIn or I found interesting perspectives that people have through Twitter. I think people are active on different social media platforms, and you can learn a little bit about the institution itself or the individual. So what does the day of look like? I will fully admit that I did not have any interviews for my dietetic internship. I went to Prairie View A&M and there was just no interview. And so I didn't even know it was a thing until I was talking to other students and friends. And I was just like, oh, wait, interviewing is a thing? Like, should I be concerned if I don't have an interview? But it worked out. I luckily got through my program, but I have no idea what the day of looks like. And I'm curious in the chat, if you're doing in-person or virtual, if you could just throw that in. I'm curious if folks have gotten any sort of invitations and what that's looked like, but what does the day look like? I'm seeing both virtual, via phone, so a little bit of mix. So whether it's virtual or in person, what does the day look like?
Emily, I think we're going to lean on you for this one.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. So I, again, applied to 2 programs. I had 2 interviews. One was in person, one was not. My in-person interview, I can talk about briefly, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be, anyone's.
We have a couple. We have a couple in the chat that say in person.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
Well, awesome.
Mainly virtual.
So my in-person interview was that was the one at Loyola, and it was at the School of Nursing. I actually had to travel like on an airplane to get there because I'm from Buffalo, New York. Which when I got there, they were like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you." I was like, "I didn't have a choice," but okay. And it was honestly pretty intimidating. There's like a ton of people who are all dressed nicely, waiting to be interviewed. Loyola's program is a little bit larger. So we had like 3 rooms going on at a time with interviews. So you might not have been matched with the program director. It could have been an alum. I'm also an interviewer or like a preceptor. So that being said, you might not interview with the program director themselves. And let's see, they just came out, they called my name, I went in there, and it's just like a normal interview. It wasn't super intimidating once you get in there. Again, the program directors and whoever else is interviewing you, they're not trying to intimidate you. They're not trying to belittle you or anything. They're just trying to see whether you'd be a good fit, and likewise, you're doing the same. That one probably lasted about a half an hour. I think both of my interviews lasted a half an hour. And then that was it. For my virtual one, I can't remember if it was over Zoom or if it was over a different platform like WebEx, but very similar structure. I made sure I was like fully ready to go, like in my chair 15 minutes before, and then I was just kind of reviewing some of my answers. Not that I'm sure that helped that much, but it was just to calm my nerves. And I logged on probably 3 minutes early 5 seemed like a little bit too eager. So I did 3. And same thing. I had 2 people that I was looking at. They were in the same room. They just asked me a few questions. They alternated. They usually alternate. And then I was able to have like a few minutes at the end to ask questions. So I think no matter the platform or whether it's in person, online, over the phone, it's going to look pretty similar. You're always going to, show up, try to be a couple minutes early and try to log on a couple minutes early. And you're always going to get some time at the end for questions.
Stephanie or Natalie, from the other side of the table, any other, what about you?
So I did not have to do an interview when I did my RD way back when, but I have have been on the other side interviewing people and as an interviewer, and you just have to be prepared. As Stephanie said, ask questions before so will I be interviewed by 1 person, 2 people? Because some people could be pretty intimidated if they show up and there's a panel of 4 people and just you. So just get understand as much as possible what to expect on the day off. So that way, if you're nervous about speaking in front of 2 people, even showing up on a Zoom call with, you're the only one, you're the person in the seat, and therefore the people interviewing you, that could be pretty intimidating. So just really try to get used to that. But everything Emily said, I reiterated. And please, whatever you are, do not be late. Don't be late. And just because someone else may have taken 30 minutes, don't start to overanalyze if yours went for 20 minutes or it's gone a little longer. Just be confident and present in the moment and, shine.
We do virtual because we have both on-site and distance. So even playing field, everybody has exactly the same interview. We schedule 45 minutes, usually takes 30, gives us some flexibility in case somebody goes a little bit longer or to debrief before we start the next interview. From a tip perspective, if it's a virtual interview, I have actually done interviews where I've had like a trifold board behind my computer with all of my notes all over it. They can't tell, they can't see. It's amazing. You can put all kinds of stuff up there to remind yourself to smile, to look up, do some career highlights in case you're having trouble coming up with a scenario or a suggestion. Nobody's going to know the difference. I took a picture once and showed it to the person who interviewed me afterwards when I was hired, just to laugh about it. But they don't know, so.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. I would have never thought about that. We have a couple questions coming into the chat, so I'm going to push pause on the ones that I have to make sure we get to everyone else's. Stephanie, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, can you guys hear me? Great. So I and a couple other people here, we're all in the same program. We're in a unique situation where we're just starting our advanced nutrition and M&T, and then we finish in August. So we're a little further behind than most people would be in our nutrition education. And our director had sent us some example questions that some interviewers might ask. And some of them were M&T related. And I was curious, one, if you check the candidates, obviously, to see if, okay, have they had M&T 1 or 2, or would they just generally ask me something about like pancreatitis, for example? And what if I didn't know the answer, like on an M&T treatment basis?
I don't think they're there to trip you up. It's okay. A test, but it's not a test of M&T. It's a test of really, are you a good fit for this? There are just some big overarching issues like diabetes and high blood pressure and stuff that you just have to know. The minute stuff, pancreatitis, the stuff that are less common. I do not think that they're there to do that to you. Like I have to believe that. So don't stress preparing for M&T for the interview. That I would definitely recommend you not do. Prepare to show your character. Prepare to show all the skills you've developed and all the skills you've built. And even if you've got an M&T question that you didn't know, be honest. Say, you know what? I know this, but in this moment, it's just be very honest about it. Just know that. Just speak through it. Speak through whatever affair you're having, but do not prepare for an M&T interview. Prepare for an internship.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I'm hoping it's more about how to handle a situation. And this is just the example given of the patient that has this condition, but that it's not so specific about the MNT piece of it. So yeah.
Now they'll expect you when you go on your rotation for,
Mhm.
whatever, you'll expect it to know it by then, right? For that specific rotation. So who knows, you may end up, preceptors, we're all very different. There may be a preceptor there and may have had a bad experience with an internship, because sometimes you wonder what kind of channels the question, and it could have been some a student she's precepting at the moment and they had no clue about something she thought they should know. So she's like, I don't want to have this happen again. So let me make sure students, whoever come on board, knows this 101. You just never know where the question is coming from. I'm curious, has anybody heard anybody, you guys have been talking to people immediately before you. Emily, have you heard anyone who's been asked an MNT question? Or do you guys, Stephanie?
Yeah, I have, but it's not been anything that's like very specific. It might be like, explain the nutrition assessment process. So, or like an ADIME note, something like that. But again, in the moment, it's very easy to just forget everything. And that's probably what I would have done. So a really great, just like standard response is, exactly what Natalie said, like, I don't know in this moment, and this is what I would do to find that answer. Because also I work in a hospital. There's so many things I don't know. I just look it up. So you would say something like, I don't have the answer right now. What I would do in a situation where I don't know in a clinical rotation or something else is I would probably pull up my nutrition care manual from the academy, and I would look at that disease state, familiarize myself, and then go do the education or whatever it is. Honestly, like if I got that answer and I asked an M&T question, I'd be pretty much just as satisfied as if they gave me like a stellar answer. I'd also, if you're not applying to like a very clinically focused internship, you're probably not going to get any of those questions. If you're applying to like, New York Presbyterian maybe, which is like, I think a very clinically focused program, you'd probably get some M&T questions. But if I only applied to public health, I certainly didn't get any. But yeah, I would definitely prepare a little. Again, the trifold behind your computer is a perfect example. But again, you don't have to over prepare, really just prepare for it's an interview about you, not about M&T.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, all great tips. Here's another question about what kind of questions should we be prepared to ask the interviewers at the end? How can we hint to the preceptor or to the interviewing committee that we really want to go to the internship? Stephanie, maybe we can start with you.
Definitely have questions. Do not get to the point where they say, do you have any questions? And you say, no, I'm good. Do not do that. Make sure you have questions. They can be something specific in your research. You can also challenge the interviewers. You can ask them, can each of you share what you think the highlights of the program are? What's your favorite part of the program? Put it right back at them and see what they have to say. It's a great idea to figure out whether or not you're a good fit and what their perspective, it might be something they're not prepared for. You can also ask them about what takes an intern from good to great. What would make an exceptional intern? You can ask, you can state, I'm hoping that I showed you I'm a good fit. Is there anything else that I can add or that was unclear in the discussion that I can help really show you, guarantee me a slot in your program? Be bold, put it right out there and ask them if there's anything. You can ask for feedback. Is there anything that you saw that I can improve going forward? Because I would have hoped I nailed the interview, but if there's not, I love the opportunity to learn and know more. So it doesn't have to be specific about the program. It can be a little bit broader than that, but make sure you have questions.
Yeah, I'd also just emphasize, if you can find it in the dietetic internship handbook, you should not be asking it during the interview. So anything that's just like, can you tell me like where I could be rotating for my clinical rotation? That is in the handbook and you should know that already, or you shouldn't be asking it. But what you can do is use some of that information from the handbook to like curate a really great question. So I think I had a couple of examples on the link that was put in the chat, but like, I can't think of anything what I wrote down right now, but something that like takes something that you learned, like I know this internship, offers like a great entrepreneurial rotation. Can you tell me about some of like, what are the students' favorite parts of like this particular rotation? Because I'm really interested in owning a private practice or something like that. And making sure that you're not alluding to something that the program can't offer you. So like there's sometimes where we'll get questions like, do you have a pediatric rotation? Like my long-term goal is to be a pediatric dietitian. And we're like, we don't have that. So you might be a stellar applicant, but you're not a good fit for the program. So making sure that you're asking something that the program is likely offering. And I completely agree, challenging. I love like talking about my favorite parts of the program, and all of the panelists do as well. So those are really, really good questions as well.
And to add to what Emily and Stephanie said, definitely some additional questions that I've been asked, what were the most outstanding qualities, skill set in your most outstanding interns? Like what areas do you think those interns who didn't thrive as well, what areas, were the most struggle, or what do you think is the most challenging part of this internship? Like, everybody's known for something. Like looking in the chat, some people are applying to programs that are requiring specific skill sets. So just know the program. It's really important to know the program and know why you're applying there and figure out what are the most challenging areas that you can anticipate and thus prepare for.
Amazing. So this next question comes from Tanisha, and she says, can you speak to the characteristics / experiences of an applicant that left an impression on you during an interview?
I would say first and foremost, just genuine interest in the program and like feeling really excited and passionate. That shows us that you're very motivated and you're really ready to like enter this time period in your life. Also just being excited for that specific internship makes us feel a little special. And it also makes us confident when saying we are sure that this applicant wants to go here. If we rank her in our top, then they are probably ranking us in their top as well. So I think just like, and sometimes that is just like making your voice like sound a little bit more excited, like not, aggressively, but not being so flat, and like smiling sometimes and just being like a little bit more cheery. At the end of my half-hour interview, I legitimately felt so exhausted and my face hurt from smiling, but it worked. So just try to really like amp it up a little for that half an hour. Of course, not like dipping into being ingenuine, but like reach your threshold of feeling excited about this opportunity and the program.
Interestingly, the ones that leave the biggest impression is when they talk about, they use their life experiences to describe a skill set they have that's totally unrelated to the position you're interviewing for, but it's a very applicable, the skill set they're trying to highlight. So I remember somebody had climbed Machu Picchu and they had, physical ailment, and just a preparation process and determination and the due diligence. It was just, it clearly much bigger than, what we were talking about, but you can see the skill set that person had. So don't feel like you have to keep every one of your responses to show the skill set you have to the internship and the rotations and clinical and this, make sure you include them. But if you find that you have a stronger life experience to tell that story, I encourage you to. Those are very memorable.
Yeah, I love that tip because I feel like there was so much work that went in specifically for the personal statement workshop to really like show your authentic self, tell about your stories, even if it's not specifically related to nutrition or to dietetics. So I think that kind of piggybacks off your other point previously, Natalie, of like, it's okay if you're repeating some of the similar stuff. Like the panelists have read so many other ones, and it's really great to be able to see you and meet you and like connect all those different stories. And that's how you are able to connect with others as well. Stephanie, I think you were going to say something that I saw you.
I would caution you to bring yourself, and by all means, tell your story, but be careful not to be professional and not personal. You know, you don't want to start in with an eating disorder or your health issues or your mental health breakdown during COVID. That's not where you start an interview. It's a professional interview. You can be more broad there and just say life challenges. You know, you don't want to talk about a dead parent in the first sentence. We've seen these in interviews where it gets it off on the wrong foot. It's too personal, and you want to make sure that you keep it professional. There are ways that you can bring that stuff in professionally, but be careful that you're not making it too personal. Sorry for the down note.
But no, but this is exactly what, it's a good point to make, because this is exactly what happens. You don't know, as the interviewer, you don't know how to pick up from there, and you're not necessarily skilled with counseling skills, and you want to be empathetic, but you have a half an hour to kind of get through the things you want to get through without sounding like you're not hearing this person. So no, it's a great point to make.
Yeah, we appreciate that. The transparency and in the real life of the interviews. This is a small kind of logistical question, so if there's any others, please feel free to put them in the chat. We're going to pivot in a second, so kind of a last call for questions. But can you tell the difference when somebody is looking at their camera versus looking at you in the eye? That was a question about where you prefer interviews looking directly into the camera as opposed to like looking at a computer screen. I guess you could have two screens, so that could be distracting, but like, is there a preference for how folks interface with you while they're interviewing virtually?
So in Zoom, if you actually take and put your cursor over a screen, you get a little hand there, looks like Michael Jackson's white glove. You can slide that up so that you put that person closer to wherever your camera is. Now, if you're interviewing with 5 or 6 people, you're gonna be all over the place, it doesn't matter. We usually say we apologize if we're looking down because we're actually taking notes. So make it an effort, be aware of it. I think it's almost more important to be aware of what you're doing personally. You know, if you're constantly doing this over on the side, because it's just not quite where you want it to be, that's going to be picked up more than where you're looking at the camera. So be careful of the distractors of what you're doing in the process.
I agree. I think there was only one time where I noticed they were literally reading off of something, and I was like, that's just really distracting. So if you do write some notes for yourself with that, which I absolutely did, just do some like quick bullets and just to remind you and refresh your memory. Don't, you know, write out the whole trilogy. And then also there was something else, but I think it escaped me.
Emily actually had somebody read us our mission statement. I'm like, I got it. I know what it is. You don't need to read that to me.
Yeah, I have that ingrained in my brain. Oh, this is what I was going to say. It doesn't bother me, and someone else can correct me if like someone says, do you mind if I just take 5 seconds and like collect my thoughts? So if you get kind of like a stumper, don't just start like spewing things out. That's absolutely what I do sometimes. Just take a second, collect your thoughts. You can even have like some note paper ready to just scratch some ideas out. But that'll really help to like think of a very well-rounded answer. So of course, don't take, you know, a minute, but taking a few seconds just to like take a deep breath and like collect your thoughts and write some ideas down, to me, it's not bothersome at all. And if that helps you, then that's great.
On the flip side, I mean, oftentimes these schools or these sites would schedule a block of interviews. So they're rolling in and out from one to the other, 5 minutes over, maybe a little bit late. And so they themselves may be distracting to you. They may be like shuffling papers, trying to get your stuff together, thinking, you know, oh my goodness, you have to be in your zone, laser focused. Try not to get put off by that. Try not to get distracted by that. And maybe you can even go through a few rounds where you have a friend be distracted and you go through an interview, a mock interview. So while you are not allowed to be distracted, don't let their, you know, distraction distract you. A lot of distraction there.
Amazing. Okay, I don't see any other questions into the chat. I do want to end on one more question before we go into the rooms about just with all of this information, like how do we go in feeling confident, feeling like calm, ready to bring our A game and ace our interviews? What are some tips around just like coming in confidently? Emily, I'd love to start with you.
Sure.
I mean, we've been calling on
this is like a nice tip for everyone. This was like what I did before I passed the RD exam. Just write your name and put an RD next to it. Looks nice. And also just like give yourself some affirmations. Like, you have made it this far. That is so amazing. And it's so difficult to even apply to these internships. Everything, this whole entire process is so competitive. So just recognize that and be able to give yourself some affirmations that are well-deserved. Even some, I think a few of those were on my Post-it note on my computer when I was interviewing, just to give yourself some props.
And be kind to yourself. Sometimes we are our own worst enemies because we're so hard, and just be whatever it is to calm yourself down. Say, you know what? I prepared and I'm ready and I'm going to do well. I'm going to do well. So repeat it in whatever way that makes you feel comfortable, but you want to go and just calm and say, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this.
I would say pause as much as you need to take a deep breath. Just to try to center yourself. It is actually a nervous energy before an interview. So some people will tell you to do a couple jumping jacks, do a couple push-ups, squeeze your whole body tight and just release it, because you're getting rid of some of that nervous energy. Run up and down the hall 2 or 3 times, not if it's a live interview and people are going to see you do it. But there's things that you can do to release some of that energy before you start. And it can be helpful. And then breathe.
Definitely. Do not forget to breathe. Love that. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie and Natalie and Emily, for sharing all of those really amazing tips. I think you could see in the chat that folks are really resonating and loved learning about all these different answers. We are going to go into like a 12-minute breakout. And in the breakouts, I just put a bunch of, not a bunch, I put 4 questions into the chat. There will be a facilitator in there. There'll be groups of around 5. I see some folks jumping. So if you can try to stay, I promise it won't be that bad. Not everybody has to answer a question, but if you're feeling bold, if you're feeling like you're wanting to give things a try, please do. So I'm just going to shuffle the rooms around a little bit since we had some folks jump, but you'll be in breakout rooms for 12 minutes, and then we'll come back and just wrap up with some final words. Are there any questions before we head into the rooms? You'll be joined by, I think there's about 4 or 5 people in each room. So that's how big / small the rooms will be. Okay, opening them now. See you in 12 minutes. And if the facilitator that's in there, if you can provide feedback, and if anybody wants to provide feedback to those that answer the question, to them privately. So instead of doing in the chat, you'll say it's to everyone, you'll pick that person and you can just give them personal feedback, whether it's like, oh, that was great, or something that has a little bit more depth and detail. But we really encourage giving feedback in these rooms. Okay, so I'm opening them up if there aren't any questions. Okay, see you back in 12. How did that go? I know we have like 1 minute left and I love to end on time, but I know. Thank y'all for sticking around and testing it out. We had a great group ourselves. So panelists, do you have any, or facilitators, any folks have any final words before we leave? Natalie, Stephanie, or Emily?
This was really awesome. And I know you all, I'm looking forward to hear all your amazing placements and joining the RD world. We need you.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, with that, yes, I think that's a great note to end on. We need you. You belong in this field. It needs you for sure. And we're so grateful that you're a part of the DD family. We're going to take just a quick picture. Tamara, is there anything else that you wanted to leave off on?
Nope, just want to say thank you so much to our panelists for not only volunteering your time with the students, but also for your time tonight. So, and don't stress out too much, folks. I want to add that in there. So thank you.
Deep breaths, everyone, deep breaths. All right, well, we can't wait to see your matches. We're gonna take a picture on 3. It's very awkward because I have to do a screenshot, but we're gonna do it real quick. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we did it. Good job. Thank you all so much for being here. We're so excited to see you on match day. So have a good one. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.